two short-term rental bros come together.
What?
Not in that way, bro. There's a podcast of truly epic proportions where we talk about all things short-term rental and shoot the shit along the way. Welcome to the Co-Host Bros Podcast. Here are your hosts, Matt Codd and Austin Spitz.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Co-Host Bros Podcast. My name is Matt Codd. I'm here with my buddy Austin Spitz. Today we have a special guest, Justin Ford from Breezeway. What is going on, Justin?
Hey, it's getting close to Christmas, kind of winding down the year, starting to reflect on what the heck happened and gearing up for the next.
Yeah, it's nuts. So, we brought you on here because we want to talk about, the liability that people are putting themselves in, the Breezeway safety program, common things that you see with people's problems, things like that, properties, so that we could just figure that out. But why don't you give everybody a whole rundown of how you got involved in the short-term rental space, what it is you do, and all these things, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'm going to be starting my 28th year in this industry. I still get carded for alcohol, so people are like, wait a minute, 20, how old are you? But yeah, I'm 52 years old. And I got started in this industry in 1997. And it was a case of, I owned a little bachelor pad on the lake, and I saw some people were renting out their summer camps, and they were making some money. And I said, wow, I'm going to try that. And so I did. I rented my house out for 2 years with a local property management company. I'd come up on, it was, the market I was in Maine was 7 days. So it was Saturday to Saturday. Saturday was turnover day. Guests leave at 10. You go up, you mow your lawn, you get your girlfriend to clean and change the beds. And the next guest came in at 4. And these guys charged me a ridiculous commission to do it. And I'm like, I'm doing all the work. Every time there was a problem, I was getting a phone call and I was going to deal with it. I was working in the banking industry at the time, running corporate yachts. And so that ended. And at the same time, my neighbor came over and said, hey, that's working well for you. You think you can help me with mine? And before you know it, I had the largest vacation rental agency in the entire Northeast, managing almost 600 units by the time I sold it in 2017.
Crazy. That's nuts. So what geared you to the safety aspect? Well,
I had served in the Coast Guard and I was a firefighter, and nothing more eye-opening than as a volunteer firefighter, you get a call and you're like, that address sounds familiar. And before you know it, you're at one of your rental properties and the grill's on fire and there's your guests. And you're like, holy smokes. And they're looking at me like, we know that guy. And I'm looking at them going, I hope they don't recognize me. But that'll wake you up and go, well, this kind of stuff can happen. What should I do about doing a better job? So I tried, I think, to be focused on safety, especially being a firefighter. So I was concerned about, the smoke alarms, testing them, putting new batteries in every year. And I thought I was doing a good job. And then in 2013, I had a guest who was not fatally, but close, almost injured with a hammock. The hammock collapsed under her weight. It was broken. It needed to be replaced. S-hook hit her in the skull, fractured her skull. She has permanent brain damage. She did survive it, but I got sued. It cost a lot of money to get out of it. And I kind of had a moment of going, well, wait a minute. I thought I was doing everything right. I thought I was like the safest operator there was, and I didn't foresee this. How come I didn't know this? And what if other people don't know this? And so I think probably the thing that then became the biggest surprise was, wait a minute, I'm focused on fire and smoke alarms, but according to the insurance industry, that's only 3% of the claims they're getting. And it just opened my eyes to all these other different type of issues that are out there that no one had ever considered.
That's awesome. So, like, a little bit about like what does it look like today for you? Like, what is the value that you're kind of putting out there to help essentially hosts and property managers mitigate their risk? So, someone like me that manages a portfolio, how can we work together, and how can you help me?
Yeah, absolutely. So, there's a lot of different ways to approach this and dig into what I do, but ultimately I think I'm a risk manager. And my secret sauce has been um gathering data on all the type of incidents that happen and how common they are when they happen. So for example, when an ambulance comes to your house because you've fallen down the stairs, they have a form they fill out, and that form goes back into a national data collection center that is going to account for the fact that a human being was injured. What type of injury? Was it from work? Was it an accident? Was it at a commercial place or was it residential? Well, when these incidents happen at short term rentals, at Airbnbs, they don't have a checkbox on the form that says, oh, this actually happened at a short term rental. So there's no way on a national level to know what type of incidents happen. You've got to dig deep, and that's what I've done. Is I've kind of found different ways to get in there and go, well, that address is a short-term rental where that incident happened. And so converting all that over, we've basically built um, a database of the type of incidents that we see in this industry. Here's a shocking one. I haven't shared this publicly before, but I'm about to soon. There were over 1 million people globally injured in a short-term rental last year. And you may go, wow, how do you know there were 1 million people? That's a lot. I'm talking everything from a cut that required a Band-Aid to obviously, a broken bone. But we just know that based on the fact the home's the most dangerous place. Over 50% of all injuries a human being has is at a home. And when you take the percentages of homes that are Airbnbs, the percentage of them they're guests, and you look against the data that's out there, that's where you can come up with this and go, wow, that's a lot of people getting hurt in our product.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that comes to my mind is like I feel like that risk and that level of liability increases in short-term rentals specifically because obviously the people aren't as familiar with the house as they are their own house. So they're
Yeah.
doing things that maybe they shouldn't be doing and they don't know that they're not supposed to be doing it and then uh-oh, an incident happens, right? So like I'm sure your statistics correlate with that saying basically it's higher in a short-term rental than it would be in a long-term rental or somebody's owned home, right?
Yeah. I mean, you take a look. So let's look at paid accommodations. You're going on vacation, you've got a choice. You can go stay at in an Airbnb in New Braunfels, Texas, and go tubing and go over to the old hall and do some dancing. That might be your vacation. But you might be going on a cruise. You might be going to Disney World. When you go to Disney World or you go to a resort and you stay in a hotel, those are commercial entities. They're required under the Federal Hotel Motel Safety Act to have all kinds of safety inspections taken care of. And then if you're drunk and misbehaving, they've got security guards that are going to escort you out of there back to your room. Same on a cruise ship. They're going through lifeboat drills, fire drills, all this stuff to make sure they're safe. When you take a short-term rental, you're just putting a person in there completely unsupervised. 99% of them haven't been inspected. And then there's that word that I mentioned before, alcohol. You've got people who are intoxicated that no one's able to control that. And alcohol changes everything.
So I want to circle back um, to the lawsuit. So it was a property you managed, a property you owned.
The property, in fact, I wasn't even the manager of it. We were just the rental agent. And it was a case of, homeowner called me up and, some of your listeners may be co-hosts or they might be property managers or they might just manage their own home. But this was just a case of, I did a favor. The homeowner had his own caretaker and he was supposed to put the furniture out for the summer and hadn't because he was sick. So I just stopped by to do it. But in that, didn't know that the reason there were two hammocks there, one brand new in a box and one older, wasn't because the house slept 16 people and it should have two hammocks for 16 people. It was because the new hammock was there to replace the old one that they knew was rusty. So I put it out. I just assumed. I assumed that they both go out. So yeah, everybody got sued, and I was pulled into it.
So, do you have like, I want to pivot for a second. Do you have like maybe like a top three or something like
Yeah.
that? Biggest mistakes like you could share that like, hey, if you're managing a property, you need to do these three things immediately. So I think this is like no offense, this is the unsexy topic, but it's like the most
Yeah.
important thing because we don't want to get sued and you need to know this stuff. So like, what do you think is
No.
like three no brainers any host should check on their property? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, so anybody can get sued, and that's usually what's the killer. It's not that you're going to win the lawsuit later. You're going to spend a ton of time and a ton of money fighting it regardless. We need to know that the number one cause of injury in a short-term rental is a slip, trip, or fall. And we also need to know that most of these incidents happen, 60% of them happen in the first hour of arrival. So you look at all this data and break it down. When do people usually arrive at the property for the first time? Well, in the evening and at night. And so, what's the lighting like? What's the experience like for the guest when they get out of a car and they go into the property? Are they navigating a minefield of different steps, rocks, transitions, curbs? The driveway's not wide enough so they can twist their ankle. It's not well lit up. You've been meaning to change that floodlight. You forgot to. You haven't done that. So, anything that you can do to make sure that your guests get from their vehicle with their luggage into that front door without having trips and falls and not being able to see. That's number one. Number two, the most deadly thing in our industry are pool drownings. And a lot of people have pools, people have hot tubs, and we don't do enough. I run into hosts all the time. They're like, well, that's on the parents. Well, yeah, it's going to be on the parents until it's on you when you get sued because their child drowned in the pool and the pool alarm you had didn't have batteries in it, or the pool gate that you had didn't latch and close like it should, or wasn't high enough. We saw a lot of pool drownings in the Phoenix market this summer where there's things that are up against the pool fence, which made it easy for the kids to climb up and over and do that. So that's another big one. And then lastly, the third one I would just list is making sure that your guests can escape their property and are notified. So they've got good smoke alarms, good carbon monoxide alarms, and if there is a fire, can they get out quickly? Have you gone through that? If you can't do that yourself, blindfolded and dark in your own rental, then how do you expect your guests to do it?
Yeah. That
I agree.
yeah, I was wondering, I wanted to go back to like the pool thing. I feel like that's something also that could be very big and also that people might neglect like some of the safety features that need to be in place in a pool. So let's say, I'm a property manager, I just signed a new client. They have a pool and a hot tub. This is my first time managing them. I don't know what to do. What
Yeah.
kind of safety features do I need to in order to check the box? I heard you say something about the alarm or whatever the case, whatever it is. But what am I looking for?
Yeah. So, if, for example, you're located in Florida, there's state laws regarding this. California has it on new builds, Arizona. So there are different markets that have different regulations. You definitely want to make sure you're following all the regulations. I think Florida's got it set the best, and yet they still have pool drownings. You should have a fence all the way around your pool. If you don't have a fence, you should have a retractable cover. If you don't have a retractable cover, you should have a net. You need to make sure that when the guests first show up to the property, that any child in their party can't just freely go to the pool for that first time without having some sort of stop block that gets them in there. So that's number one that needs to be done. Number two, you have to have a way to rescue them. A lot of people think the life ring is a piece of decoration that goes at their pool, and frankly, I don't disagree. I'm looking at the two of you guys. You're both healthy looking fellas. If someone is drowning in a swimming pool, I think all three of us are going to jump in and try and save them. That's just the thing we do. It's not a big surface area generally. It's not hard. But what we don't do enough is consider what happens if we can't. You know, Austin, what if you're just had a broken leg, and Matt, what if you're 75 years old and you need a new hip? You're not jumping in to save your grandson because you can't physically do it. And so we need to make sure we have pool safety hooks. They're about $40, $50. Those need to belong at every pool. They need to be accessible. because we've seen so many drownings in our industry where we've put a life ring, but you throw it and it's useless to a kid that's already, incapacitated. But a safety hook, you can actually pull them out and start working on them. And then the other big one is making sure that you've got a water watcher program in place. They're free. It's so easy. You can go on the U.S. Consumer um, Product Safety Council's website and order this. In fact, I told one of my customers in Costa Rica this recently, and believe it or not, the U.S. government sent him the whole free package all the way to Costa Rica, and he's not even an American citizen. So that's pretty cool that the U.S. government will send those out. It's a card. You leave it on the counter. When the guests show up, they're like, what's this? I don't know. It's something we have to wear for watching the kids. They may not do it. They may think that they're super parents and they don't need that thing, but at least you've put a little bug in their mind that, wow, maybe I guess maybe we should keep a little closer eye on the kids around the pool. They're not used to this.
Now, what is this exactly again? Like, what does it do? This thing you just mentioned, this device?
Yeah, it's called a water watcher card. And it's a business card. It's a plastic card with a hole punched in the top that says, when I wear this card, and a lot of people will put them on like a hair tie that's elastic. You can put it around your wrist. I've seen them wear their necklace. But if I'm wearing this, I'm watching the kids. I'm not drinking alcohol. I'm not going to the bathroom. I'm not doing anything other than 100% responsible for the kids. And if I'm going to go to the bathroom or I'm going to have a beer or a glass of wine, I'm going to hand this to somebody else who is going to watch the kids. Because these kids who are going to these vacation rentals, the reason these people are renting them is because they don't have a pool at home. So they're not experienced with this. And the parents are on vacation. They have a vacation brain. They're drinking. Kids are excited. They want to go get in the pool. They get up before the parents. So all these different things, when you've got this card, you're wearing it and you're at least putting in play, hey, kids, no one goes out to the pool unless an adult's wearing this and watching it.
I think so. It's great because I mean, you and I met at a meeting. We also were on another meeting, and you talked about safety and everything, and the liability that can happen. So it's funny because that transfers over. I recently started managing a house that's on stilts, and I had explained to the guy like, "Hey, look, you need to have like 3 emergency ladders." And he's like, "Well, why?" And I said, "If your house burns down, there's only one way out. So, you have a second floor on top of that. So you need one for the room down here and one for each of the rooms up there." And he's like, "Well, why?" And I'm like, "Because if somebody dies in your house, it reduces your liability, saying you're not negligent. Like you gave them ways out, right?"
Yeah.
And we display them proudly and put pictures on them, and put the pictures in the listing and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think people understand, and and that's the reason I wanted to bring you on here, because I want people to understand the importance of the stupid shit that doesn't cost a lot of money that can reduce your liability. I mean, what are those ladders? I think I paid $60 for each of them, or well, he paid for them, but I mean, 50, $60. They're not that expensive. I got some in my own house. I mean, even the smoke detectors, like I was blown away when you were talking about smoke detectors, and I want to get into that too, because people need to understand, like, not all smoke detectors are equal, right? So I mean, there's an immense amount of liability that you can do as a co-host or a host or a property manager or anything to reduce liability and maybe save somebody's life. I But before we jump right back into that, I do want to circle back to because we are based more on co-hosting and property management. How difficult was it for you to get up to 600 units?
It was hard, and it was over time. I didn't have 600 at once, but certainly, over time, when I started out, you took, as a property manager, you took whatever you could get. And hopefully this is a nugget for your listeners. I talk to professional managers all the time, and I find out this is like the most important thing that I want to know is, when did you transition, or have you transitioned from the point where you'll take on any listing that comes your way because you're trying to grow your business, to then telling someone you'd consider taking on their property? And when you suddenly switch gears to going, great, you want to list your house with me? Let me take a look. Eh, I'd consider listing it, but I need you to do this and this if I'm going to put my efforts and time into doing it. That is the big turn. And that is what happened to me after, about 100 properties. A lot of it, frankly, was just kind of junk and people were complaining and you're just getting through. And then you get that one listing. The one listing that's just is, I mean, it looks like it could be in the catalog for Pottery Barn and it's on the water and you're just like, wow, this is it. And you book it out. Then all of a sudden someone comes along with that crappy one and you're like, yeah, I got a really nice one now. And if I'm going to list yours, I want yours to be like that nice one because I'm making a ton of money on it. And so that's how I grew, was getting to that point where suddenly it was exclusive. People were like, boy, I hope Justin would list that property.
Justin, you can't
By
tell
you
me that.
saying no.
Yeah, I was gonna say, uh, you can't tell me it took you 100 properties to develop that mindset. There's no way. You had to have figured it out before that.
Well, just remember the market that it had to do with the market that I was in. Maine is a very old market. There aren't a lot of new properties that are up here. It was a lot of old summer camps, things that, the mice are running around in the wintertime. There wasn't a lot of inventory to choose from. So that's why I took that. If I had been in, you know, outside of Austin, Texas, or in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, absolutely that would have been a whole different story. But it had a lot to do with the market that I was in.
I think it comes down to when you're sending out owner payouts or invoices, depending on however you do it, and you look at how much work and time and energy you spent on a property, and you look at the return that goes back into your pocket for your commission. I think that's the dictator of like, is this property beneficial? Is this worth the money for it? And at the beginning, I was having ones where I was sending out. For me, it was like, say I would request $600, $700, $800 for it, and I was like, and I did how much work for it? I was like, no, we've got to elevate it. We've got to elevate our standards. But to your point, I think you're right that you have to start somewhere. And when you're in the beginning phases, you need to get your reps in because you need to earn the trust of your of people around you and your business. So yeah, I think I don't know what the specific number is, but it does come in time to where you're like, yeah, this is my new standard, my new minimum, my new avatar.
I had that. It took me probably 4 years, but we did get to a point where we said, "Hey, look, and at that time it'd be more now, but at that time was if I'm not going to generate 5,000 in commission off of renting this property, it's not worth my time. We're not going to list it." And I'd like to think we made the right call most of the time, but there certainly was a time or two where you'd then see that property out there and they did stuff to it, and it's like, well, you didn't tell me you were going to put money into it. I would have taken
So that would be a lesson to you, everybody, and your kids. Just say no. Just say no to
it. Yeah,
drugs and just say no to clients.
that's right.
So you sold your company.
Yep.
Do
I
you
sold my
manage
company.
properties now anymore?
My wife has a vacation rental that I always like to joke, people like, wow, you've been in the industry a long time. I'm like, well, technically my wife's been in it since she was 5 years old. So she's been in it longer than me, over 40. They have a place in Maine that they've rented out every summer. And it's pretty funny. I hope she doesn't listen to this, but it cracks me up. I mean, I kind of stay out of it, but it's one of these things where it's the same family every week for every summer. They bring their own linens and they clean their way out when they're done. And we just go in and grab the trash. And I'm like, we got to do some work to this thing. We could make a lot more money on it, but they got their routine. So I kind of try and stay out of the way.
So I just want to pivot for a second. So for our listeners and for me myself, frankly, that doesn't really know, you mentioned a few times of getting certified. Like, what does that look like? Is that something that you recommend, you provide? I think Matt went through the process. I don't know if he wants to talk about it a little bit, but yeah, this is very foreign and new to me, so I'm sure it's very new to our listeners too. So if you want to touch on that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So real quick, and this is going to connect with your listeners, I believe. Home safety training in America is in kindergarten. It's based on a 1967 incident in the state of New York where two kids did not go to a fireman when he was trying to rescue them because they were scared and one of them died. And so home safety training became, let's go to schools and show kids firefighters breathing like Darth Vader and show them that they're not scary. We'll give them a little red helmet and they can squirt some water and honk the horn and off they go. That is home safety training in America. And it's insane that that's all we do. And yet we have, 33,000 people who die in fires every year. And so there is no home safety training out there. The only type of training that happens or certifications has been for elderly, and it's been about coming into a home. As you get older, you run into these situations where you can't move very fast, you trip and fall. So the little focus there. After the safety incident that happened with me in 2013, I started looking around and said, well, how are we supposed to know how to make these properties safe? And I took all the insurance data and all the data I could find on all the type of incidents, and I created education around it. And we rolled that up into a course in 2019 with Breezeway. Used to be a couple hundred people a year took it. Now we're into the tens of thousands a year. And the cool thing is the insurance industry got behind it, and they give discounts to people who go through this training. So if you use, for example, Proper Insurance, a lot of people do, they're the biggest, they give you a 10% discount on your insurance. I'll let Matt maybe share a little bit about what his experience was like going through the course, how long it took you to do it.
If you like Justin, it's not that bad. No,
Yeah.
it was great. I think it was informative. A lot of it I already knew because we had already talked about it in Alabama. But the only thing I didn't like, I was like, damn, I want to take a snippet of that. So I remember like with like the fire alarm sheet like that you make, like, and then like a couple other different sheets. I'm like, damn, I need to take a snippet of that because I was like scrolling through trying to see if I could find like a downloadable version in there, but I couldn't find it. And I was like, and then you talk about a lot of different things, and it's like really simple to do, like, the safety cards on your refrigerator. A lot of people. The biggest thing that opened my eyes in general was obviously the fire alarms, and
Right.
then the barbecue grills. The barbecue
Yeah.
grills. How many people are having fire pits and barbecue grills that are at risk of burning down their house? And it's kind of funny because I was at a meetup and I was talking with another guy who has a house in Crystal Beach, and he showed me this rendering. He's like, I'm gonna put a fire pit right here, and I'm like, I wouldn't do that. And he's like,
Yeah.
what? And I'm like, you're gonna burn the whole side of your house down, dude. You need to like either move it. And how much room do you have in the back? And he's like, oh, it's pretty big. And I was like, can you do like 25 feet away from your house? And he's like, well, yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, you should probably do that because it's probably not a good idea to put it on the corner of your house. You're gonna burn your whole damn house down. And it was like, it gets windy over there, and it's like, not a good decision. But I mean, I think it was an easy course. I can't remember how long it took me.
It takes most people
How
about
long was
4
it?
to 6
6
hours.
to 8. Yeah,
Yeah,
6 hours. I think it was like
you
6
might take
hours.
it a little longer. You're a special student, but
Yeah.
the
You
yeah,
reviewed it. You reviewed it. So I
I
mean, you
know.
should have known.
You kind of
53 minutes. No, I'm just kidding.
you kind of served me up here because actually I got to make sure I'm going to resend it to you afterwards. I mean, one of the greatest things about the course is when you're done, I give you access to a app guide that refers back to everything in the course, and you even have access to my 20-page Justin's favorite safety products, which I don't get any. They're not linked to an Amazon store. I don't get any money off it. It's just my favorite thing. So I'll make sure you have access to that again because I think
No,
that's
I
one of
do
the
have that touch state guide that you're talking about the touch
yeah.
state guy. Yeah. I go through it every once in a while because I need to get with you after this because I need to figure out how to pay for access just to be able to do the safety checklist walkthroughs
Yeah.
and to be able to do it through the app and have it stored. Um,
Yeah.
I don't want to use technically Breezeway as a PMS, but I do offer to check the properties when I go for the clients, but I want to be able to have somewhere to store it easier than looking at the guide and writing it down and stuff like that.
So that's a
So
great point. And Austin, I think this would go to what you were talking about earlier, talks to the legal side of things. I mean, obviously Breezeway is a great tool to do that, but if you're not using it, documenting what you're doing will save you a lot on the lawsuit side of things. I have a friend in North Carolina. He called me a couple months ago and he said, dude, I don't know what to do here, but we just got served a notice of intent for lawsuit because a guest who stayed with us 3 months ago apparently fell coming into the property. She said the lights weren't working. And she's been out of work and all this stuff, and now she's suing me. What do I do? And I was like, oh man, that sucks. Well, he uses Breezeway, but even if he hadn't, just the fact that he had the picture was great. I said, let's go look. And so we look back, and in his cleaning report, one of the tasks his cleaner is supposed to do every single time there's a turnover is to check to make sure the outside lights work, and she takes a picture of it and it goes in the report. So I went, dude, you've got this. Send this over to the lawyer and say, on the date and time that you're saying this guest tripped and fell, I have documentation to show that my cleaner checked the outside lights and she even took a picture of it. So we're going to use that to dispute your claim. What do you want to do? And so he sent that back, and he waited for like a week. And then he called me up. He's like, I want to get on a plane right now and fly to you and buy you all the beer I can buy. I'm like, why? And he's like, I finally called them and said, what are you going to do about this? And they're like, yeah, no, we're fine. We're dropping it. We're not going to bring it up. Just because he had, now if he didn't have that, that's pretty hard to go, geez, 3 months ago? I don't know if my lights outside were working or not. That would have cost him easily $120,000 to deal with, even if he wanted.
That's insane. You did bring something else up that I wanted to transition to, because of a lot of our listeners, maybe they're saying they're doing it. I don't know. Maybe most of them, I don't think, maybe they are, maybe they're not. But I know a lot of hosts that neglect this. And you mentioned barbecue pits. And I think that's a really good point to bring up, because it's so critical, number one, and it's not whatever you think your cleaner is doing, regardless on the barbecue pit, they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So you're saying, oh, I'm getting it clean. My cleaning team does it. Yeah, probably not. So the thing that I wanted to bring up is like, how do you suggest regular barbecue maintenance? Because you have to have a specific inspector in place or something to do like that. Like, do you recommend a deep clean every quarter? I guess it depends on use. What's the best way to manage these barbecue grills? Because that could be something bad very quickly.
Oh yeah, they're real bad. I just know of 9,000 incidents last in 2023. I think we're probably higher this year. I'm not able to really get all the data that shows me more, but I'm willing to bet it's more. I show up at sometimes to look at short-term rental properties, and they're like, "Oh, look, Justin, we put a fire extinguisher by the grill on your recommendation." I'm like, "That's great, but it's empty." And they're like, "What?" And come to find out, it's actually been used. It's like people will use it if you put it out when there's been an incident. So we've got to recognize that the grills that we're putting at most of these properties came with a 49-page instruction book. Like that Next grill, I see that all the time. A Weber, you're over 40 pages. 6 of them are just warnings and things like never light it with one of those torch sticks. You're not supposed to do that. That little chain and stainless steel thing that hangs off the side of the grill, that's to put a match in that allows you to stay very far away. If you give your renters anything to light that grill with other than a match in a bad situation and it blows up, you're done. You're going to lose that lawsuit. I'm watching that happen with a friend in Florida right now. They did everything they were supposed to do. They had instructions that said when you arrive, the propane tank will be off. You just have to turn it on. Well, a guy who had been drinking a couple beers showed up, and the cleaner never turned the propane tank off, didn't check it. So when the guy showed up, he saw the instructions. Instead of turning it on, he actually turned it off. Couldn't get it to light, gave up, turned it back on again, thinking he was turning the gas off. And when he lit something, there was a massive explosion and it blew his leg off below the knee. That was at a short-term rental. And that's because even when you're doing the right instructions, you got to set it up. So grills, at least 3 to 10 feet away. I like to use a dog chain to secure them where they are. I'm a big fan of if you're going to go gas, go with the Blackstone grills, because then the flames aren't bursting into your face. It's a griddle. One of the problems I see in the South all the time, especially Florida, Alabama, Texas, and this isn't a derogatory or racist remark. It's somewhere someone who came from Latin America came with this idea that all grills need to have aluminum foil put in the bottom of them to make them look clean. And that's only places that I see them. And it's typically been from some cleaner that's come from those areas. And they block the drain. And now the grease has nowhere to go. And I'm trying to get to the root of it and find who the master person is who said, this is something we need to do at all these rental properties. Put aluminum foil in the bottom, because the instructions say, don't do that. It forms a lake for grease it will catch on fire. In fact, Matt, you and I saw that actually happen in Alabama. Those grease fires are
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah, that happened actually right after you had your talk and they were trying to cook some chicken. The grill caught on fire. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's happened to me before too when I was in Tahoe and there was nothing to put it out with. And I was like, shit, what do I do? And I was like, grab flour. And like, we just doused it with flour. But it's crazy because if we wouldn't thought about it, his house would have been burnt down. We were on Lake Tahoe. It was on a deck right in the guy's house would have been gone. Like,
Yeah.
so it's funny because I mean that's why I like having you here because I feel like people don't understand these things and like I didn't know that you're supposed to once a month vacuum your smoke alarm. I
Yeah.
didn't know that. You
It's
told me that and my
it's mind blowing because so the U.S. Fire Administration figured out in the 1980s, holy smokes, houses that have these newfangled smoke alarms in them, people aren't dying, they're getting out. Let's get more of these out there to America. Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan were like, yeah, let's do that. Let's put money into it. Problem was is they were too expensive. So in order to make smoke alarms affordable for Americans, they had to dumb them down and take a few things out of it. Oh yeah, by the way, they're gonna have to vacuum them once a month. Yeah, that's fine. We'll deal with that. That's how they get them out there. And you think I'm kidding? Look at your instruction manual and your first alert of your kitty right now. They require vacuuming once a month to keep the dust out because the dust will set them off. Then you'll pull the batteries, then they don't work, and then people die. We haven't got there to fix that yet. And it's kind of crazy. It's insane to think that that's where we're at. But they are fortunately starting to come out with some better models that are now every 6 months. And I've even seen some that are once a year with this new UL 217. You'll start to see them now in some of the hardware stores. They say they don't go off for nuisance cooking fires. So we're starting to get a little better, but we're not there yet.
Did you know that, Austin?
Sorry, say it one more time. My bad. I just got distracted
Did
by
you know
something.
that you had to vacuum your smoke alarm?
Oh, I heard you say that. Yeah, no, I did not know that, and I've never done it. So,
Yeah.
we're gonna have to figure that out.
And also, you probably don't have
Yeah.
batteries in your smoke alarm right now because it went off one time at 1 a.m. and you went, for gosh sakes, there's no fire in here. And you pulled it and I'll put it back in the morning and you didn't.
Yeah, that's something we're definitely doubling down on. I know me and my team we're I think implementing Breezeway, and we have another system in place, but we're looking to do something like that, and this is just something we're going to go down a rabbit hole, and that's why, like, to me, the biggest things in the back of my mind that, like, common sense wise, they give me the most anxiety to make sure you have like the right systems in place is barbecues and pools. I think those are the two. And based on our conversation, it sounds like highest liability, highest risk, most incidents, other than the tripping incident, which that's a little bit, it's controllable, like you said, with the lighting, but like the barbecue pits, like that's controllable. And if you don't get on top of that, something's going to happen. And then same with pool safety too. So I think those two are the big concerns that we need to check and make sure we're doing everything correctly, right?
You hear all the time about certain things. If it was that easy, why isn't everybody doing it? Well, everybody is doing short-term rentals. Everybody wants to rent properties out. And guess what? It's not that easy. And it's harder than it looks. And most people skip the step. Everybody wants to go to pick the ripe cherries, which is I'm going to put the right pillows in and a really cool sauna and put a mini golf course in, a putting green, and wait till you see my big screen TV. Do all that. That's great. But don't do that until you do the hard work first, which is to make sure your people aren't going to get injured or killed when they stay in your property. If you haven't got that under control, you got no business putting in a big screen or an arcade or a putting green.
Yeah, and people will buy fire extinguishers and put them in the kitchen under the kitchen sink, huh?
Yeah,
How helpful is that? How
that
helpful is that, Justin?
that's not helpful at all. So think about this. What's a
That's like
fire extinguisher?
I'm pretty sure that's how it's set up at my house. So let's go ahead and open up this bag.
Yeah,
That's
so
how it's set up at everybody's house, and that's why I asked that.
Oh, yeah,
but
it's
that's good,
pretty much,
Austin.
yeah.
That's your house, right? And if your house is on fire, if you don't put your fire out, you don't have a place to live, and you got a mortgage and you got insurance. It's going to be a pain in the butt. But if you're staying at an Airbnb and it catches on fire, this isn't your home. Who cares? I'm out of here. And that's what 85% of your guests are going to do. So if you don't make it easy for them to get to the fire extinguisher, they're out of there. And now you're dealing with contractors, insurance. How come the insurance is only giving me 20 grand? The contractor says it's going to cost 40 to redo my kitchen. And by the way, I don't have any income coming in right now, and my mortgage company, and it's a nightmare. The fire extinguisher is a tool you give your guests to save your home. Why hide it? Why make it difficult for them? I don't care if it looks ugly. Put it out in the open, put it in a bracket 3 to 5 feet off the floor, put it near an exit so that they're on their way out the door going, oh shit, this isn't my house. This sucks. Oh, wait a minute. You know what? I feel safe. I'm by the doorway. I can get out. But I'll give this guy a 20-foot or a 20-second, shot of fire extinguisher here. And if that knocks it down, that's cool. But if you don't do that or set them up for that, they're never going to do it.
Good.
What happened there?
I don't know. We're still recording, so we're good.
Yeah, that was a trip. Sorry about that, guys. The whole screen flipped on us. That was awesome.
Yeah, you're on the right. You're on the left now. I'm still on the bottom.
Yeah.
I think it was a safety issue with the way something was wired in Justin's house. It was something's wired all wrong. Didn't pass the safety inspection there. His refrigerator, probably.
I think my kid's in the other room hacking my podcast is what he's doing, probably.
That's first. That's the first.
Yeah, it's great because it's funny because when you explain those things, like people just don't understand it and they don't get it, and it's like, and when I hear it from you, you tell me these things, and I'm like, damn, like that makes a lot of sense. Like, yeah, if I'm at somebody's house and I don't know where I'm at and the kitchen's burning down, I'm not fucking looking through all the cabinets trying to find a fire extinguisher.
Right.
I'm like, I'm running. Like, yeah, some people might be quick on their toes. Like when on Tahoe, it was like, grab some flour. We have some flour, find flour. But like most people are going to be like, oh shit, time to go. Grab your stuff, kids. Let's go. And they call the owner. Hey, by the way, your house is on fire. Hey guys and gals, I just want to let you know that we're going to do a live with how to find, oh shit. Hey guys and gals, I just want to let you know that we're going to be doing a live January 29th at 4 p.m. Central with how to find your next deal using STRIQ. If you don't know what STRIQ is, it's like the Zillow of finding properties based on cash and on cash return. We have an episode coming out, or it may have already came out with Matt Sanderson, the co-founder. It is really an awesome product. So if you want to see that, just come and check out our Facebook event. We'll also go live on YouTube. If you can't find it, just feel free to DM me. I'll give you the link. Also, want to let you know if you do want to use STRIQ, we do have a code for 20% off. It's Co-Host Bros 20. So if you use the code Co-Host Bros 20, you'll get 20% off your subscription. So anyway, I hope to see you guys at the live. I want to make sure that you're there because we're going to be giving away some stuff, dropping a bunch of knowledge, and maybe we'll pick you with your question. Who knows? So we hope to see you there, and thanks so much. I'm sorry. Yeah. And then I want you to touch on decks too. So I want you to touch on a lot of the deck problems because there are a lot of people, houses with decks. I know Austin's an area with a bunch of decks. I'm an area with a bunch of decks. I recently when my house hit by a hurricane, my contractor's out and saying, hey, your deck is not right, needs to be supported correctly. So, since we both had deck issues, we all have deck issues, let's talk about decks.
America has deck issues. According to the Washington Post, over 50% of decks in the United States right now are going to be prone to failure. This is a great topic right now. I was talking to this lady. So if you're working or investing in Sevier County, Tennessee, which is Gatlinburg, Smoky Mountains, they're going through a renaissance right now of safety. Starting January 1st, all these new safety regulations are being put forth there, which is something I'm using as an example that's coming to your town too. Might as well get this done before it does. But I was working with an engineer there, and she sent me a picture of wood. And when you look at wood in the 1950s and 60s, it was really solid and tight. When you look at a cross cut of like a 2x4, the wood is really nice. It's pretty. It's really fine and tough. And then you look at a piece of wood on a 2x4 today, and it's all like rough and the rings aren't good. And it's because we're using all this quick growth forest now to structurally build things. And it's a big part of all the problems we have, but especially with decks. And so a deck today that's built is probably going to last maybe 15 years. If you're in an ocean environment, maybe only 10. And it was 30 years 20 years ago. So you got to remember these things aren't built to last a long time, not like your house. That pressure treated wood isn't going to last forever. It splinters. Um, you've got to have bolts and screws underneath your deck, not nails. Nails don't hold up, nails pull out. We've seen a lot of deck collapses. Deck collapses are real. I know of 27 deck collapses that injured short term renters this past year. That's a lot. And there was more the year before. You don't want a deck collapse at your property. You need to have it inspected at least every 5 years by an engineer or a contractor that comes in and can analyze and make sure your deck is still safe.
So let's say let's pivot for just a second, if you
You
don't
guys
mind.
like to pivot. You guys are pivoting all the time. I
Unless
feel like
Matt, I pivot a lot. I'm sorry, my bad. Matt, did you have any more questions on decks?
What the deck, man?
I don't mind
Give it
pivoting.
away.
We got to put on my music if we're going to pivot a lot more because I'm doing a lot of dancing with this pivoting. I like it though. I like it.
Yeah,
We
I'm
like to
just
keep
kind
you
of
on your
like
toes for safety purposes.
questions. A lot of these interviews, questions come to my mind, like specifically that impact me, and selfishly, I just want to ask them because but I also feel like people have similar questions. But one thing when you were talking that came to my mind when you started talking about decks was like, okay, a deck is one incident, but let's say, somebody reaches out to me, Austin, we want you to manage our property. Okay, now I'm going to walk the property with the owner. Everything looks great. I know it's going to make me the amount of money that I want to make. But when I'm walking the property, I guess what's a method or what should I be weary of when I'm walking the property from a safety perspective where I might be able to identify some red flags that may
Yeah.
make the property not worth managing it because it's not up to standard. So like I guess is there a good system in place uh, for identifying some of these red flags?
Yeah, there's a great book out there by a guy named Bruce Barker. You can actually see it for free on Google. It's a deck book. He's got a thing in there that I've always loved. It's been used in court in our industry before, by the way. It's that there's no such thing as grandfathering. People always say, "Oh, I'm grandfathered. My house was built in 1975." No, you're not. There's no such thing as grandfathering when it comes to safety. But some of the things that he talks about in that book are really helpful. A railing shouldn't move more than an inch when you lean on it. You lean at a 45-degree angle. If you can't, if that railing or that handrail is moving more than an inch, it's time for some work. When you look underneath the structure of the deck, you want to see a bolt, a nice big lag bolt that's not rusty, that's holding the deck onto the side of the house. That's called the ledger board. You want to see one of those at least every 6 inches. Those are going to be holding that in strongly. If all you're seeing are nails, that's where you want to say, hey, you know what? All I'm seeing are nails here holding this ledger board onto the house. And I get it. It's been here 15 years, but, I don't want to find out if it's going to be here 16. So let's get an engineer here in here to take a look at this and make sure it's good. And if you haven't had that in 5 years, you should. So those are a few things, rot, soft spots, obviously, as you're walking around the deck. Real quick calculation though. I'll say it fast, but you can play rewind if you want to hear it. You want to take the square footage of the deck, so 10 by 10 deck, 100 square feet, multiply it. A deck should hold 50 pounds per square foot. So multiply that times 50, that's 5,000. And then the average American weighs 176 pounds. Divide that by 176, and you look at a deck and go, holy smokes, this deck should be holding, 47 people. No way. I don't feel good that this is built to hold 47 people. That's when you get the contractor to come over and go, I want to feel good that 47 people can be on here because that's what it should be built for.
Yeah. So even with the talk of decks as well. So the railing. So the railing should be a certain height. But what about if I have a hot tub on my deck?
Oh yeah, let's add that. Let's add
Let's
8
add that
pounds
in.
per gallon, 300 gallons. Do all the weight calculations. One of those decks that collapsed last year in the Smokies had an 8-year-old girl in it. It had something I called framing bias. The deck looked like crap. It needed to be replaced, but the homeowner didn't want to spend money on it. So all they did was put new railings on. And you looked at the deck and went, wow, this deck's been upgraded. This is great. But didn't realize that the structure underneath is holding this hot tub, and it collapsed with a girl in it. She was in critical condition. I've heard all about the lawsuit on that one. It's a big one. So you've got to make sure that you have an engineer involved. If you're going to put a hot tub in the air, to make sure it can support the weight of all of that water and all of the people that are going to be up there using it, hands down, you can't guess that one. That needs expert approval involved with it, and it's not hard to find an engineer to calculate that for you.
And the deck railing should be higher where the hot tub is, right?
Yeah, if your hot tub's close up, remember, people are going to sit on the edge. In fact, most people, stop doing that, by the way, if you're doing that. I see all these marketing photos where there's a girl in a bikini holding a glass of wine. She's sitting on the edge of the hot tub. Well, you're promoting that it's okay to do that. You don't want people sitting on the edge of your hot tub. If they're hot, get out. That's why there's a 15-minute limit. It's not to sit up on the edge and cool down. And if you're too close to the railing, now you've lost that 36 inches of protection, or 42 if your market requires it, where you've got no guardrail. So then they can just fall right out the back, and that happens more times than you want to know.
See, I think a lot of people just don't know all this stuff, and I think this is good to
they
share.
Don't train for it. Yeah. And here's the other thing. I'm going to pivot for a second. Here's the other thing. This is why I'm pivoting.
Hey, baby.
Here's a comparison. Let's talk about seatbelts for a second. I wear a seatbelt. State I live in, it's required by state law, but there's people who don't. Cops pull people over all the time. Some people buckle them in and then they sit in front of them because they don't want to wear it. So Ohio has the worst rate of people wearing seatbelts in America. Sorry, Ohio listeners, but that's just a fact. 80% of people
wearing them.
80% of Ohioans wear seatbelts. 20 don't. It's required. So they went up to those 20% and said, why aren't you guys wearing seatbelts? Well, a bunch of them said, I have an airbag. I'm all set. A bunch of them said, I don't want the government telling me what to do in my own car. And then still a few more said, I'm insured. If something happens, I'll be all right. Well, go back to the short-term rental industry. That's what I see. I see about 80% of people care about safety. Most of those people think they're doing something, but they don't know. I change my batteries every time the clock changes, and I went to Lowe's and the service man told me that's the best one. So that's what I put in, and they think that they're being okay. Fire extinguishers in a box in the laundry room. I bought one. I'm a good safety person, but they're not. And we got to work with those. But the other 20% that go, you know what? It's a parent's job to watch their kids around the pool. That's not on me. I don't need to put a gate in. It's the parents' responsibility to make sure the bunk beds, the kids are in the right ones and they're not going to fall out. That's not on me. And I'm insured for that. And so they think insurance is just like the people who say the airbags are going to protect them. They just think insurance will cover them. But guess what? The growing number of lawsuits that I see are hosts suing their insurance company because their insurance company didn't cover them in an incident that they thought they were covered for. That should be an eye-opening situation for a lot of people. That guess what? If the guest fell down the stairs, you didn't have a handrail, they're not covering you. Guess what? If the guest fell when they were coming into the house and the outside lights didn't work, they're not going to cover you. The insurance company doesn't want to cover you. They're going to find every way not to. So you've got to make your property safe because there's no airbag, and the government is going to, shouldn't be telling me what to do in my own home stuff. You're letting the general public in. You have a duty of care responsibility to make sure your property's safe. I like that.
Go ahead. That was a good pivot. 10 out of 10 pivot. Great stuff. Right. But makes me think like we need to have we need to have almost another segment of like just insurance related, because there's the preventative stuff that you do, and then there's the whole other beast over here, which is making sure you have the proper insurance coverage, because I'm sure a lot of people out there think they're covered properly because they have a landlord policy and only pay $100 a month, and they have no idea that they're not covered for anything that they're doing. So that makes me want to have somebody else on here to talk specifically.
Oh yeah, I got the guy for you. My friend Nick from Proper Insurance. You'll love him. He's a snowmobile. He's a snowmobiler up in Montana. His family grows barley for beer, and he'll fit in great with you guys.
We need to get him
All
on.
right, but you have the calendar. Send it over to him.
We're hooking him up because your listeners will love to
Connect us.
hear from Nick.
Connect us. Man, okay, so I mean, we're running short on time, so I want you just to give everybody just the one thing. If you're not doing it, this is just what you need to do, and tell everybody where they can follow you, find you, where you can get certified, whatever you want to plug, and yeah.
So here's the deal. There was a survey that came out this past year. 62% of people who have never stayed in a vacation rental, in an Airbnb, short-term rental, whatever. These are the people that when they go travel on vacation, they go stay at Disney World, they stay in a Hyatt resort. They would never, and I run into them, you guys have too. Oh, I'd never stay in one of those properties. 62% of those people said the reason they wouldn't is because they're not safe. They don't think they're safe. They see all the media reports all the time. We have a huge opportunity in here, and here's your gold nugget. Don't do this because someone's going to sue you. Don't do this and make your rental property safe because it's the right thing to do, even though it is. Someone shouldn't come on vacation, stay in your home, and get hurt. Do this because it's a business opportunity. We know now, factually know, that people who address safety and promote that they've addressed safety and their properties are safe have seen at least on average 9 to 12 point increase in bookings by marketing it. You just have to Google safe Airbnb. You'll see Waterbury, Vermont comes up. You'll see New York comes up. Look at those properties. They're marketing it and their calendars are full. Safety sells. People care about it. So go do it because it's good business and you're going to make more money doing it, and then enjoy the residual of the fact that your guests go home safe. The Breezeway safety course is free. If you're a customer of Breezeway, and there's a free way to be a customer of Breezeway, we have what we call freemium accounts. You can sign up and try out Breezeway for free with one property. And when you do that, you get access to it. Follow me on Short-Term Rental Safety on Instagram. I post tips and tricks all the time. Follow me on Instagram, Short-Term Rental Safety, or Facebook. And I'm easy to get in touch with, safety@breezeway.io, because we're a tech company. Shoot me an email and I'll make sure you get access to the safety course. Take it online, get certified, get a discount on insurance, and make sure your guests go home only with great memories.
Wow. All right. Well, thank you so much, Justin. I really appreciate it. I know with your busy schedule, it was tough to get you on because you're like the traveling man. With all the pivots you don't like to do, you're always pivoting on the plane.
Yeah, that's right.
And I look forward to the next adventure of you driving me around on a boat.
I look forward to that as well, Matt. We got to get together soon. Do you ski?
I don't ski. I'm in Texas. It's freaking hot. I like it. It's cold right now. It's too cold for me.
I'll take you to a ski resort where there's snowmobiling too. I bet you wouldn't mind snowmobiling.
I don't mind going fast. I'm like Ricky Bobby.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, with that, I'll let Austin ring us out.
Peace.
Hey guys, thanks so much for listening to the show. We just want to say thank you. And if you get an opportunity to rate us on your favorite podcast platform, that would be awesome. Also, if you have another chance, just give us a follow on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, pretty much everywhere you can find us. I really appreciate y'all listening. If you have questions, please hit us up, info@cohostbros.com, or just shoot me a DM, shoot Austin a DM, and we'll get your questions on the show. If you want to be on the show, hit us up, info@cohostbros.com. Thanks again for listening, and please just leave us a review. Thanks, everybody.
The Co-Host Bros Podcast.